All right, guys, now we're going to draw a monolithic slab foundation, which hopefully you remember what a monolithic slab foundation was from the class, and I hope you took notes as well. Okay, now I'm going to start drawing this, and knowing what I have to draw, I'm going to use that information to position my starting point or what I'm drawing on the paper. And I'm going to start on the far left end of the slab itself. So I want to come over to the lower left side of my paper, not up against the border. Okay, I'm typically going to go about 1.5 inches away from the border before I start drawing. I want to leave some space over here for annotations and dimension lines and things like that. Now you don't have to measure out 1.5 inches, but just sort of eyeball it if you want to know what it looks like. You know, put your ruler on here and say, okay, there's about 1.5 inches. So right in there is about 1.5 inches. So I will start my drawing with that, you know, just kind of going up into this space right here. And I need to draw an 18-inch footing over here on this side. Now, monolithic slab is kind of like a footing and a stem wall and a slab all together in one piece. And I'm using 3-inch scale. You know, don't forget to use 3-inch scale on this drawing. So the height of my wall is going to be 18 inches. So I'm just going to reference the 6-inch mark on the 3-inch scale ruler. And then I'm going to mark right here at 0, and then I'm going to mark, let's see, there is 1 foot right there, so that's 18 inches, 1 foot, and then 6 inches. That is 18 inches, so I'm marking that right there. I want to make sure my line is straight, so that's why I'm not going to use my scale to actually draw the line with. I want to put this on here, my triangle, of course, making sure that you rest that thing on that parallel bar so you can get a nice straight line, and everything will be all tidy, all even and together. Okay, so there is the 18-inch side of my slab, or I'm sorry, the side of my foundation, which really is kind of like a stem wall right in there. The next thing I want to do is draw the top surface of this concrete foundation. And I really don't need to measure. It doesn't matter how far it goes over to the side, because what it's going to actually do is it gets cut off, because you can't see the entire foundation in one picture. And I'll show you how we treat that right here when we cut that off. All right, next thing I want to do is measure the thickness. Now, of course, by code, we have to have at least a 6-inch thick slab under the house. And it could vary depending on where you're at, what the engineers have specified, and what have you. So, again, using that 3-inch scale, I am going to measure, I'm just going to do a 6-inch slab just to save paper space. So I put right here the line for the top surface of the slab. I put it right there at 0, okay? And then I mark, what am I marking? 6 inches right here. And then again, I use my triangle to get a straight line to there. Or actually, I'm sorry. I actually don't want to draw a line there yet. I do want to mark this, however. Don't draw that vertical line yet, because I'll show you how we're going to treat that line in just a minute. Let's go ahead first and draw the underneath of the slab. Now, you've probably already started drawing, and I didn't mention this at first, which it's okay. I don't expect your first one to be, you know, special or anything like that. But when you start drawing, when you're drawing with pencil, always start off by drawing your lines lightly, because you're going to have to erase them eventually to make corrections. And you don't want to leave a bunch of smears and everything all over your paper. So draw your lines lightly. I'm going to draw mine darkly so that you can see them in the video. Just like I'm going to do this line, I'm actually going to draw it lighter than I would. You'll probably still be able to see it, but as you can see, not much. You can't see it real well. The reason I don't really go ahead and end this line, and I draw it light because I am going to erase some of that line, because this footing is going to come up at a 45-degree angle and meet that line somewhere. And then I'll show you you'll understand how that works here in just a moment. Okay, so anyway, my slab, my monolithic slab foundation, my stem wall, and my footing will be down here. And I have to, again, that would be engineer specified, but we're gonna say it's about 8 inches. Okay, so we're gonna put the ruler right here on the 8-inch mark, or the 3-inch scale, okay, on the 8-inch mark of the 3-inch scale ruler. And I'm going to measure out to 0, because that will be 8 inches. And this will basically be the footing of our foundation. Okay, so there's our footing. And then we're going to get a 45-degree line coming up from here up to there. Now that line can vary, and especially because when they place these foundations, they're digging in the dirt. It's not actually going to be perfectly straight 45-degree line, but that's how we draw it. So to do that, I'm going to use my 45-degree triangle, and from the edge, or from the end point of that line, that footing line, I'm going to draw 45 degrees up until I meet the 6-inch portion of the slab. And then I'll just take my eraser and remove all this stuff right here. Okay, so that's gone. And now we have foundation with our stem wall, our footing, and then our slab. Okay, now one thing we're going to do next is we're going to kind of indicate what kind of a wall we have here, and that is so that when they're laying the slab foundation, or this when they're laying this monolithic slab, they'll know what other treatments they need to give it in order for it to be appropriate. And one of the things there is that we anchor the walls down to the slab. So again, we're going to use the 3-inch scale. Right here in this area, there's going to be a piece of 2x4, a 2x4 piece of wood that is going to be laid flat on the surface, and it's going to come flush with the edge and then extend 3.5 inches this way, because we know that a 2x4, which indicates 2 inches by 4 inches, is really not 2 inches by 4 inches. It is 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Okay, so with the 3-inch scale ruler, I am going to measure, let's see, 3, 4, 5, okay, 3.5 inches is right here. Okay, starting right there, I put the 3.5 inch mark on the concrete, and then I'm put a mark here to indicate that's where that 2x4 stops. All right, and now I need to go 1.5 inches upwards. So I'm going to, however you want to do that. So I've got 1 inch right there, and then 1/2 inch right there. So I'm going to mark the 0 to here, and that's 1.5 inches. I'm going to use my triangle to shoot a straight line up to that elevation right there. Using my parallel bar, I'm going to bring that across. I'm just going to draw a light line for now, because I couldn't really see where I needed to execute that line at. So here we go. And then of course I'll kind of darken that in a little bit now that I have drawn it. Okay, and then erase the excess out here to the side. Now you don't have to erase as you go. You can wait until you end before you erase your light lines. And I actually recommend that. And I also recommend, instead of blowing your eraser bits off of the paper like I just did, and instead of using your hand, okay, which blowing on your paper can cause you to get little pieces of spit or saliva on your paper, and then using your hand, of course your hand has these natural oils in it that will cause you to smear some of your drawing. So use a brush, and we have brushes in the cabinet, in the supply cabinet over on the wall by the door. Next thing I'm going to do is put a mark in here so I know that what this is. This indicates that this is the cut end of a 2x4 or cut end of any piece of wood. So you just really put an X in there. Okay, and there is that what we call the seal. Okay, that is the seal of the wall. That is the bottom seal seals up next to the concrete or onto the concrete. Now above this, I'm going to draw the 2x4 stud, and I'm only going to draw. I don't have to have a certain distance, and I'll show you how we treat the end of that in just a few minutes. So that represents my 2x4 stud, okay? And this tells them basically what type of wall and foundation we're working with here, because they have to put in J-bolts that we bolt the wall to. And I don't know off the top of my head, I'll come back with that information later, but I'll tell you how far those J-bolts are supposed to be separated from one another around the foundation of the house. But here we kind of just draw a representation of that. So right through the middle of that 2x4, we're going to draw a straight line. And of course, there's also a distance that this must come down, and I will give you that information as well. I have to look that up first. But it comes down about that far, sometimes further. And then here it just kind of bends and goes around like a hook. And you can freehand that, okay, or you can use any kind of a template or circle tool or anything. Now I need that to be like a real J-bolt, so I'm going to have two lines to make it like a real live J-bolt. And I'm going to try to freehand this hook again. Okay, so there we go. And to make this look even better, even more precise, if I could find a particular eraser, I can probably use this one. And going, well, nah, we can leave that. I'll take that back. Don't worry about erasing that. All right, so anyway, there's our J-bolt. We need to close it up at both ends. And to make it look like a bolt, you can put some little slash marks for the threads of the bolt all the way down. Carefully, approximately, spaced evenly or as evenly as you can get it. You don't want it to look too sloppy, so keep that in mind. All right, now on top of this J-bolt, there's also a nut that actually attaches or helps secure the wall to the foundation. And you could probably freehand that. It doesn't have to be a certain size, you're just indicating that it is there. Okay, and you can even texture that a certain way if you want to, and you can even be really cool, kind of erase the bolt out of the center of the nut, something like that, and then just kind of put a metallic texture to it. Okay, so now your J-bolt. So structurally, this is what you have. The next thing we have to do is up underneath the slab is going to be packed sand or gravel or both. Okay, we're going to do a kind of like a packed sand. We're going to have a couple inches maybe of sand layer. And of course, all this, when they're building this, all this is cut out. They, take a bulldozer and dig all the dirt out. So, of course, you can put sand under here. And I'm going to go with about, let's go with about a 3-inch layer of sand. And then I'm going to go down here to about 6 inches because that's going to be some packed limestone or granite or something like that, kind of like a gravel. They actually call it gravel, but it's not really like the gravel you're accustomed to seeing in a garden. It's chipped limestone or chipped granite chipped, any other kind of material. So I'm going to draw these lines here to indicate my sand, and I'm going to label this too later, so you'll know exactly what all of this is. And then of course down here is just earth, okay? Now over here, I have to indicate my the layer of the undisturbed earth, or the level, sorry, of the undisturbed earth. Now by code, we have to have at least 6 inches of this visible, of this stem wall. So, and that has to be above the finished grade. So I'm gonna measure down 6 inches, put me a little tick mark right there, and then that is gonna be the finished grade, okay? Now as I finish this, as I go through it, I gotta put certain patterns in here to represent the material, and this will make a little bit more sense once it is more earth-like, okay? Now, to treat this end over here, and we're also gonna treat that up there a certain way, and this is how I do it. I start out with a light line, okay, and I actually extend this line a bit further. Doesn't have to be any particular distance, but a bit further than the actual slab itself, okay? Then I use my 45-degree thing here, a 45-degree triangle, and I draw a 45 here and a 45 over here, just through, just like that. And I might want to do another one down here just to further indicate that this is actually cut off. So that's what this is going to be. It's going to be a line that says this cuts off right here, and it continues on the other side of that line. So to get this to its finished state, we just draw 2 lines like that, 2 lines like that. Okay, and then we get the eraser out, and we erase these lines here, and then of course any excess lines you might have. And I shouldn't have used my finger to do that. You know, you gotta kind of build habits. I've gotten out of a lot of habits, a lot of good habits, and have developed bad ones. Okay, so there you go. So this is basically a break line, and that tells us that that is broken off over there. And we'll do the same up here. With this one. Okay, extend that line a little further and put us a 45-degree slash right through it. Connect that one, connect that one, and then erase. Again, telling us this is cut off and that there's more that continues after this line break. Okay, so that so far is the foundation. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to dimension the foundation. That'll be on the next video. Okay. Now, in dimensioning the foundation, we want to look at the important things that we need to dimension. Okay. So what's really important about this is, one, our 6-inch space right here. Okay. So we're going to use this, and I'm going to draw a straight line, approximately what's going to be best. Now, here we're going to use the real ruler, the 16 side. Okay, so there's the 16 side right there. The dimension line should be about an eighth to a quarter of an inch away from the wall. It depends on, one, it depends on who you work for, and it also depends on you know, several other factors such as how much space you have, whatever. But we're going to use a quarter of an inch. So we're going to place the dimension lines a quarter of an inch everywhere we use them. You have to be consistent, okay? That's consistency. All right, so there's our quarter-inch line. I'm also going to need to extend a extension line from here out to here. And that extension line, I'll show you, you'll see what an extension line is here in just a second, but I want to come about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch away from the side of the structure and draw an extension line. See how there's a gap right here? Okay. Now I take my triangle and draw a line. And depending on how you're supposed to write your numbers, okay, the way you're going to write them in here is to leave a gap right there. And that's where I'm going to put 6 inches. This is where things get a little tedious. And you have to use, of course, you can use a regular ruler. I use a graphing ruler to measure my letter sizes. So my letters for this are going to be, let's see, 1/8 of an inch tall, okay? So I want to mark my text box. I'm going to make a little text box, and I put the center of that line right through here. I put a mark here, a mark here, and I draw these next lines extremely light. Okay, and then very neatly, I'll draw a 6 going from one line to the other. Okay, and put your little inch indicators. You got to have those indicators. All right, and then there is, that indicates 6 inches from here to here. Okay, now you'll probably also want to indicate, and in this case, we can use what's called a continual dimension, and just basically continue that same line down to the bottom. So we'll draw another little extension line. Again, about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the object. Even with the same line. Okay, draw it down, skip a spot right in the middle, come all the way down to the next extension line. Okay, now of course there is no gap on this one because that actually also represents the earth or the grade level. There's a way that we fix that and make sure people understand where we're measuring to by putting a 45-degree slash right through that intersection, okay? And we also do it up here with the extension line. Okay, so 6 inches between those two hash marks, and it'll be the same here. It'll be 12 inches between that one and that one. So now again, we're gonna put our lettering in there. Draw a very light line to represent a text box. And of course, once you finish, you can go back and erase all these lines. So here, I want to put my best ever 12. Okay, so there is 12 inches. There's your dimensioning. The bottom, this right here is very important as well. So I have to have that dimension. And again, we're going to need some extension lines. So I'll come down here, go about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the object, draw an extension line, same here, and draw an extension line. Use my parallel bar to draw between those lines. And again, I want it to be about, what did I say, 1/4 of an inch. And actually, I can use the 1/4 inch scale. 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the building. Now let me use the ruler. Or the edge of the structure. And draw a little bit, make a gap, and then draw a little bit more. Puts these little 45-degree hash marks on there. And then draw my best, oops, I forgot my little text lines to indicate where my text is at, or where I need to write my text. Okay, so as you can see, it is getting a bit tedious. And now I will draw my very best number 8 for 8 inches. All right, this we don't have to measure, of course. Everybody knows that it's going to be 45 degrees. However, we will go ahead and indicate that as well. If you don't have a circle template, you can use a compass, because what you're going to do is you're going to draw some lines here. So we'll draw a line from here to here. Okay, and we're going to indicate this as 45 degrees. I want to make us a little text box, 1/8 of an inch wide or tall, very light lines, and we just say 45 degrees. Okay, we don't need to do this one, it's the same as that one, so there's no need to do that. We do need to annotate or dimension our slab and the level of our different materials underneath. And this is the way I do that. Just, you know, we're going to go right down through the middle, or maybe not exactly the middle, but I'm going to draw a line here, stop, skip a space, draw a line here. I'm going to keep going through, stop, skip a space, keep drawing through the next one, stop, skip a space, and then draw on through there. Well, actually, I didn't need to draw on through there. Need to draw it to right there. And 45-degree mark right through the intersections. And I really should have been more consistent there and not drawn such a big line. All right, and this is now the way, depending too, again, on who you work for, the way you're going to draw these numbers. Some people want all the numbers, all of them straight and vertical. And of course, we'll get a chance to do that too, mainly when we get into computers. But here, I'm going to draw this. I'm going to draw my very best. I think, what was it, 8-inch? Or did I do a 6? I think I did a 6-inch slab. Okay, so I'm going to, well, again, I got to have my lettering. So here I can actually mark all the way down for my lettering. Those two little tick marks, very light line, very light line. My very best 6-inch mark. And I think we went 2 inches on each of these, I believe. I think that was, or 3 inches, that's what it was. 3 inches and 3 inches. Okay, and that gets your dimensions for your different layers. You know how thick the slab is, you know how thick your sand is supposed to be, and how thick your gravel is supposed to be. And from here, let me see what else we got to do. We just have labeling. Okay, now labeling. Okay, close. I hope that didn't mess up the video. All right, but I'll show you labeling on the next video.